Introduction to the Life of Elisha, a Legacy of Faith and Service. Elisha, a name that resonates through the centuries as a vivid example of unwavering faith and dedicated service to God. His journey began in an unlikely way when Elijah, the great prophet, called him to leave his life as a farmer and follow the path of divine service. This transformative encounter not only altered the course of Elisha's life, but also defined his mission, to be a channel for God's purposes on earth. From that initial moment, Elisha witnessed and participated in extraordinary miracles that attested to God's power and faithfulness. He accompanied Elijah on his missions, learning not only the ways of prophetism, but also the absolute dependence on God in all circumstances. Each event, from the confrontation on Mount Carmel to Elijah's heavenly separation, shaped not only his faith but also his character and understanding of the divine will. Elisha's legacy transcended his own achievements. He not only succeeded Elijah as Israel's spiritual leader, but also continued his ministry with fervor and zeal. His life is marked by moments of profound teaching and divine compassion, such as when he brought life back to the Shunammite woman's son or when he cured Naaman of leprosy, showing that God's power knows no limits or borders. In addition to miracles, Elisha's life is a study in the complexity of human faith. He faced personal challenges and doubts, as evidenced by the incident of the mocking youths at Bethel, where his divine response brought both judgment and reflection on the nature of God's authority. Throughout his journey, Elisha not only served as an intermediary between God and his people, but also taught valuable lessons about obedience, humility, and the importance of trusting completely in God's ways. His example continues to inspire and challenge those who seek to live a life of faith and service today. This text will explore the life and teachings of Elisha, highlighting how he embodies the truth that, with God, there are no limits to what he can accomplish through a dedicated and obedient heart. In the book of 1 Kings, chapters 19 and 20, we find the account of Elisha's call, a crucial episode that marked the beginning of his journey as a prophet. The context of this call is fundamental to understanding not only Elisha's personality and mission, but also the spiritual and political dynamics of Israel at the time. Chapter 19 describes the moment when Elijah, the great prophet of the Lord, faces a crisis after his dramatic confrontation with the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. He flees into the desert, discouraged and seeking refuge from the persecution of Jezebel, the queen who threatened his life. In this moment of despair, Elijah is confronted by God, who finds him in a cave and asks him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" 1 Kings 19 verse 9. Elijah's response reveals his emotional and spiritual state, but it also sets in motion a series of events that would shape Elisha's future. God instructs Elijah to anoint as his successor Elisha, a young farmer who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen. This symbolic act not only indicates the transfer of prophetic authority from Elijah to Elisha, but also ushers in a new era of spiritual leadership in Israel. Elisha, when called, demonstrates a remarkable readiness to follow God's will. He sacrifices his oxen and uses tools from his old life to prepare a farewell meal for his family, indicating his determination to abandon everything to embrace his new calling. His immediate response and willingness to leave his former life behind show his unwavering faith and obedience. The meeting between Elijah and Elisha is not only a moment of transfer of prophetic power, but also an example of spiritual mentoring. Elisha chooses to follow Elijah, serving and learning from him for years before assuming his role as chief prophet. This period of learning and preparation is crucial to the spiritual and ministerial development of Elisha, who demonstrates not only prophetic abilities, but also a heart dedicated to serving God. Elisha's calling not only inaugurates his own journey as a prophet, but also signals a new chapter in Israel's history. He becomes an instrument in God's hands, facing challenges, performing miracles and defending divine truth in the face of corruption and idolatry that plagued the nation. His calling is not just a historic event, but an inspiration to all who are called by God to abandon the ordinary and embrace the extraordinary in obedience to his will. Learning from Elijah is a theme that transcends the simple historical account and delves into the depths of faith, courage, and commitment to God. Elijah, one of the Old Testament's most outstanding prophets, not only faced monumental challenges in his own life, but also left a powerful legacy that continues to inspire and teach to this day. Elijah emerged at a critical period in Israel, when the nation was deeply divided spiritually and morally. He stood out not only for his courage in the face of King Ahab and Queen Jezebel, who promoted idolatry and injustice, but also for his deep connection with God and his zeal for divine truth. His name, which means, "My God is Yahweh," reflects his mission to restore true worship and confront the idols that had led God's people astray. Learning from Elijah begins with his unwavering commitment to the Word of God. He was a prophet who did not hesitate to proclaim the truth, even in the face of threats and persecution. His confrontation with the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel is a dramatic example of his trust in Yahweh and his willingness to challenge falsehood with divine power. Elijah teaches that truth and justice are non-negotiable, and that commitment to God often requires unwavering courage and firmness. Furthermore, learning from Elijah also includes his experience of faith and divine provision. In moments of despair, such as when he was persecuted by Jezebel and hid in the desert, Elijah experienced God's faithfulness in extraordinary ways. God sent ravens to feed and sustain him, and later provided him with food and guidance through a miraculous journey to Mount Horeb. These events show that God not only protects his servants but also equips them with divine resources to fulfill their mission. Another key aspect of learning from Elijah is his interaction with Elisha, his designated successor. Elijah not only called him to succeed him as chief prophet, but he also mentored and prepared him for years. The relationship between them highlights the importance of spiritual mentoring and the transmission of knowledge and authority from generation to generation. Elisha learned not only from Elijah's words, but also from his example of faith, courage, and obedience to God. In short, learning from Elijah transcends the individual lessons of his life and ministry. It represents a call to integrity, courage, and trust in God in times of adversity. His story resonates as a powerful reminder that God's servants are not alone in their journeys, but are strengthened by divine presence and provision. Thus, those who seek to learn from Elijah find not only a model of prophecy and supernatural power, but also an example of unwavering devotion and commitment to the kingdom of God. Elijah's departure is one of the most striking and enigmatic episodes in the Old Testament biblical narrative. This event not only ends the ministry of one of Israel's most iconic prophets, but also reveals profound spiritual lessons about the transience of earthly life and trust in divine providence. Elijah, whose name means, "My God is Yahweh," emerged as a courageous and intrepid prophet during a troubled time in Israel. He confronted King Ahab and Queen Jezebel, who had promoted idolatry and injustice, openly challenging false gods and calling the people back to the worship of the true God. His life was marked by powerful miracles and a deep spiritual connection with Yahweh, who sustained him through times of adversity and triumph. The account of Elijah's departure begins with the appointment of his successor, Elisha, a young prophet who followed him faithfully for years. Elijah, knowing that his time on earth was coming to an end, led Elisha on a farewell journey to several significant places. At each stop, Elijah was approached by prophets who foretold his imminent departure. This culminated in their last encounter at the Jordan River, where Elijah parted the waters with his cloak and crossed over to the other side, accompanied by Elisha. The moment of Elijah's departure is described in a dramatic and supernatural way. A fiery chariot drawn by fiery horses descended from the heavens and separated the two prophets, taking Elijah to heaven in a whirlwind. This extraordinary event not only witnessed Elijah's transition from earthly life into the direct presence of God, but also confirmed his special position as one of the few biblical characters who did not experience physical death. Elijah's departure not only marked the end of an era, but also left a lasting legacy of faith, courage, and obedience to God. Elisha, his successor, received a double portion of Elijah's spirit and continued the prophetic ministry with power and authority. This episode teaches that although God's servants may physically depart, their spiritual impact and legacy continue to influence subsequent generations. Furthermore, Elijah's departure also offers a profound reflection on divine sovereignty and trust in God's providence. Elijah trusted completely in God's direction and purpose for his life, even in the face of monumental challenges and threats to his safety. His departure was not just a closing event, but a testimony that those who trust in God will not be abandoned, but guided even beyond the borders of earthly life. Therefore, Elijah's departure is not just a historical account, but a spiritual lesson on the importance of unshakable faith, obedience to God, and trust in His provision. Elijah departed not only for heaven, but also for the hearts and minds of those who seek to follow the path of truth and righteousness. His example resonates as a powerful reminder that those who live according to God's will leave an eternal legacy that transcends mortal life. Elisha, successor to the prophet Elijah, is known for his impressive ministry marked by miracles that demonstrate God's power and His concern for the needs of the people of Israel. His life and works are recorded in the Old Testament, especially in the books of 1 and 2 Kings, where he is portrayed as a man of deep faith and a channel of divine blessings. Elisha's ministry began when he was called by Elijah while plowing with 12 yoke of oxen. Elisha promptly left everything to follow his master and become his successor, revealing from the beginning his willingness to serve God without reservation. After witnessing Elijah's miraculous departure to heaven, Elisha demonstrated his faith by asking for a double portion of Elijah's spirit, which he was granted. Elisha's miracles were many and varied, beginning with his first miraculous action when he used Elijah's cloak to part the waters of the Jordan River, imitating his predecessor. This gesture not only established his authority as a prophet, but also demonstrated that he was Elijah's rightful successor in the eyes of the people and kings. On one occasion, during a severe famine in Samaria, Elisha prophesied an abundance of food despite the desperate circumstances. God used Elisha to feed the hungry people, showing his compassion and divine provision even in times of crisis. Another notable episode was the healing of the Syrian commander Naaman, who suffered from leprosy. Although initially reluctant to follow Elisha's simple instructions to dip 7 times in the Jordan River, Naaman eventually complied and was completely cured of his illness. This miracle not only restored Naaman's physical health, but also strengthened his faith in God. Furthermore, Elisha multiplied oil for a poor widow who was about to lose her children because of debt. The miracle not only alleviated their immediate financial distress, but it also demonstrated God's concern for the oppressed and needy. Another famous narrative is the miracle of the floating of an iron axe, where Elisha helped a disciple recover a tool lost in the waters of a river. This small miracle not only highlighted God's attention to the details of his servants' lives, but also showed the practical, everyday nature of the faith that Elisha taught. Elisha's ministry was not just about miracles, but also about profound teachings about faith, obedience, and the nature of God. He instructed and advised kings, servants, and common people, leaving a legacy of integrity, humility, and commitment to the divine will. In short, Elisha's ministry was marked by a series of miracles that not only confirmed his position as God's prophet, but also revealed God's compassionate and powerful character. His achievements highlight the importance of unshakable faith and trust in divine provision, inspiring generations to seek God's presence and will in all circumstances of life. Elisha, the prophet who succeeded Elijah in the Old Testament, faced numerous challenges in his ministry, each offering profound lessons and reflections on faith, obedience, and the sovereignty of God. His path was marked by powerful miracles and moments of trial that revealed his devotion and unshakable trust in the Lord. From the beginning, when he was called by Elijah while plowing the land, Elisha demonstrated a readiness to follow the divine call. He left his previous life behind and gave himself to the service of God, an example of total abandonment for the divine will. This initial act reflects the importance of readiness to respond to God's call, even when it means abandoning personal comforts and security. One of the most striking challenges Elisha faced was succeeding Elijah, a renowned and powerful prophet. However, rather than seeking fame or recognition, Elisha humbly asked for a double portion of Elijah's spirit, desiring even greater training for divine service. This request was not selfish, but a demonstration of his aspiration for robust faith and effective ministry. The miracles performed by Elisha are also a source of deep reflection. From the dividing of the waters of the Jordan to the multiplication of oil for a poor widow, each miracle not only showed God's power but also revealed his concern for human needs. The healing of Naaman, the Syrian commander, from leprosy is an example of how simple, obedient faith can result in complete transformation and healing. However, not all moments were of triumph. Elisha also faced moments of discouragement and trial. When the widow of one of the prophet's sons faced crushing debt and was about to lose her children, Elisha intervened, revealing not only God's power to provide but also the responsibility of believers to help those in need. In addition to miracles, Elisha's interactions with kings and leaders also offer powerful lessons about faithfulness to God in all circumstances. His refusal to accept gifts from Naaman after his healing demonstrated that his commitment was not to material rewards but to the glory of God and the truth of his testimony. Elisha's ministry is a powerful reminder that the Christian life is a journey of faith and obedience, filled with challenges that require constant trust in God. His teachings echo through the centuries, challenging us to seek God wholeheartedly, to live with integrity before others, and to trust in God's provision and sovereign power in all circumstances. In short, reflecting on the life and ministry of Elisha leads us to examine our own faith and commitment to God. Their experiences offer not only inspiration but also valuable instruction on how to face life's challenges with courage, humility, and an unshakable trust in God's promise and power. The meeting between Elisha and Naaman is one of the most striking and revealing episodes in the prophet's ministry in the Old Testament. This moment not only demonstrates God's power to heal, but also reveals profound truths about humility, faith, and the universality of divine grace. Naaman, a powerful Syrian commander, was facing a desperate situation. He was a leper. Leprosy not only represented a debilitating physical illness, but also carried social and spiritual stigma at that time. Despite his high position and his fame as a warrior, Naaman was powerless in the face of this illness. Hearing of the prophet in Israel who could heal him, Naaman set out toward Elisha's house with an impressive entourage and valuable gifts. His expectation was to find a great ritual or majestic ceremony for healing. However, upon arriving at Elisha's door, he was surprised not by a glorious encounter, but by a simple message from the prophet's servant: "Go, wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be clean." 2 Kings 5 verse 10. Initially, Naaman was outraged. He expected an immediate cure and treatment befitting his position and wealth. The simple order to dive into the Jordan River did not live up to his expectations. However, his servant persuaded him to obey, and Naaman eventually dove into the Jordan 7 times as instructed. Naaman's obedience brought complete healing. His skin became clean, his leprosy disappeared, and he was transformed from a desperate and proud man into one who was humble and grateful. This episode not only showed God's miraculous power to cure incurable diseases, but also highlighted the importance of simple faith and radical obedience to God's commands. In addition to physical healing, Naaman's encounter with Elisha revealed a profound spiritual truth: God's grace knows no ethnic or national boundaries. Naaman was a foreigner, an enemy of Israel, but God chose to use him as a living example of his redeeming grace. This challenges the limited view we often have about who God can bless and heal. His grace extends to all people, regardless of their origin or social status. Finally, Naaman's encounter with Elisha reminds us that true greatness comes from humility before God. Naaman had to abandon his pride and personal expectations to receive the divine blessing. Likewise, we are called to humble ourselves before God, recognizing our need for His grace and obediently following His ways, even when they seem simple or contrary to our expectations. In short, Naaman's encounter with Elisha is a powerful testimony to God's transforming work in the lives of those who seek His help with genuine faith. He teaches us about the importance of humility, obedience, and the universality of divine grace, challenging us to trust God completely and to live in obedience to His ways, regardless of human circumstances or expectations. Naaman's encounter with Elisha and his subsequent healing from leprosy is not just a historical account, but a powerful life lesson filled with deep meanings relevant to us today. Firstly, this episode teaches us about the importance of humility before God. Naaman, a powerful and influential commander, had to set aside his pride and personal expectations to follow Elisha's simple instructions. He initially expected grand treatment worthy of his position, but was faced with the necessity of submitting to a simple act of faith, diving 7 times in the Jordan River. Naaman's humility in accepting this guidance, even if it was contrary to his expectations, was crucial to his healing. Furthermore, the episode highlights the importance of faith and obedience to God. Naaman not only had enough faith to follow Elisha's instructions, but he also demonstrated radical obedience by repeatedly diving into the Jordan River. His obedience was not just an act of carrying out an order, but a deep expression of trust in God and His healing power. Another essential aspect is the universality of God's grace. Naaman was a foreigner, a Syrian, not an Israelite. However, God chose to use him as a living example of His redeeming grace. It reminds us that God's salvation and blessings are not limited to a specific people or nation, but are available to all who sincerely seek His help and guidance. In addition to the spiritual lessons, Naaman's encounter with Elisha challenges us to reconsider our own attitudes toward healing, both physical and spiritual. Often, like Naaman, we may seek grandiose or complex solutions to our problems when the answer can be found in simple acts of faith and obedience to God. This encourages us to trust God more fully, even when His instructions seem contrary to our human logic. Finally, Naaman's encounter with us today encourages us to seek humility before God, to exercise faith in His promises, and to live in obedience to His commandments. It reminds us that God continues to work miracles in our lives, if only we are willing to submit to Him with all our hearts. Therefore, as we reflect on Naaman's encounter with Elisha, we are challenged to apply these lessons to our own spiritual and personal journey. May we learn Naaman's humility, faith, and radical obedience, allowing these virtues to transform our lives and bring us closer to the heart of God. In the context of the story of Elijah and Elisha, we saw vivid examples of faith, obedience, and miracles that echo through the centuries, offering us not just ancient accounts but perennial lessons for our contemporary lives. The saga of these prophets is not just a record of extraordinary events, but a testimony to God's faithfulness and power manifested through those he chooses to fulfill his purposes. Elijah, the bold and fearless prophet, whose life was marked by courageous confrontations with the forces of evil and powerful demonstrations of divine power, teaches us about the importance of unrestricted trust in God, even in times of great adversity. His fight against idolatry and his ministry of spiritual restoration to Israel serve as a powerful reminder that God raises up leaders to call his people back to the truth and exclusive devotion to him. On the other hand, Elisha, Elijah's humble and diligent successor, illustrates the continuity of divine work through generations. His ministry was marked by miracles that not only benefited individuals, but also witnessed the transforming power of God in the lives of those who seek his help. From the multiplication of olive oil to the miraculous healing of Naaman from leprosy, Elisha embodies God's willingness to act in ways that transcend human expectations, demonstrating his love and personal care for his people. Throughout these stories, we find valuable lessons about how to respond to God's call in our own lives. Just as Elijah and Elisha faced monumental challenges and experienced divine triumphs, we are encouraged to embrace our faith with renewed vigor, to trust in God's provision in the midst of difficulties, and to remain obedient to his commands, even when they seem contrary to human wisdom. The closure of this journey is not just an endpoint, but an invitation to apply the eternal truths of these narratives to our own spiritual journeys. May we learn to listen carefully to God's voice, to fully trust his sovereign plan for our lives, and to live in ways that glorify his name in all times and circumstances. May the story of Elijah and Elisha be not just an ancient story, but an ongoing inspiration for a life of faith, service, and devotion to a God who is faithful to fulfill all of his promises in us.